Oh, okay. So I'm gonna be honest and say I hesitated a little bit to start this video, um, because it gets crazy. So as I've been seeing in my posts, if you've been seeing my posts on YouTube, um, the further it's almost kind of like an unraveling. Like it's like you start unraveling something and it's getting more and more and more and more is coming out. It's just this rabbit hole. There does not seem to be an end to it. You start on one direction looking for, certain uh breadcrumbs to try and lead back to a certain uh answer, I guess. And all of a sudden you're going on leads and you're like, oh, well, who's this person? You put that in and you start, oh, well, this person actually did this and said this. So why did they do that? And now you're going to the left. Now you're going down this way. And it's happened so often that I've actually had to stop myself and start taking notes and write, don't forget to, look down this path. But this isn't productive for the first question we were asking, which was, you know, what's going on with these uh golf courses, right? So I've had to stop myself multiple times from going down all these different channels. With that being said, all of this is so interconnected in so many different ways, and I have found some really interesting things. This is going to be a great episode. There's a lot. There's a lot to get into, so grab a snack, grab something to drink. Um, as it's going to be a wild ride here. So the first thing I want to start off with is an email in the Epstein files. It's an email that Jeffrey was CC'd in. So I'm going to pull that up here. Give me one second. I am starting to get a little bit better with the controls here. So today's episode might be a little bit more smooth than the last. But I'm also still new at it, so bear with me here. All right, pull this up. Can you still see me? I want to see if you can see me. Yes, you can. Okay. So here's the email. CC'd in it that's Jeffrey's email. G vacation. Um, so if you want to go take a look at this email, if you want to go in the files, that's fine. I really want to focus on one thing before we get started in here. It was one particular um line in here that I thought that I had highlighted that is important to know, because here it is. I thought it was highlighted, but it's not, but I'm going to highlight it now. So, this is from Philip Kafka, who said, I openly and proudly support Trump. I've actually been able to pull people away from Hillary by saying, only vote for Trump or Sanders. Citing that everyone else is establishment politics, I convinced a lesbian woman older to consider Trump after she went on a rampage about him. It just shows people have no idea what they're talking about. The media holds the cards. People are sheep. Okay? The media holds the cards. People are sheep. Okay? So I wanted to start with that because let me just pull down for a second. I wanted to start with that because I want to go into these next topics that I'm going to go into with the mindset that the media is holding the cards. The media has all the cards. They know it. People are starting to figure it out, but there are still plenty of sheep that are being herded. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this. I will say I've had people ask me, like, okay, yeah, we know all this, but still, there's nobody in handcuffs. And you're right. I mean, it is, I don't know what day we're on now of this show of the Epstein files and the child trafficking, all of this stuff, and yet there is nobody being prosecuted. I've yet to see anything happen other than the people that they have openly thrown under the bus. Those are kind of like the little treats that they give you to make you think like, oh, okay, people are getting arrested for this, but no, those are just the people that they threw under the bus to make you think that. Again, the media is holding the cards. They think that you are sheep. So keep that in mind as we move forward here, because a lot of times the media will say one thing, but then what actually happened is an entirely different thing. So basically what I'm saying here is we can't trust the media, the mainstream media. You can't trust it. You can't trust it. And they are openly talking about these things in their emails to each other behind closed doors. So with that in mind, let's move forward. So last week, I was talking about the fact that Ivana Trump is currently buried at the Trump National Golf Course in Bedminster, New Jersey. Okay, so keep that in mind as we move forward here. Let's see, there is a news report that Ivana Trump, Donald Trump's first wife, died at the age of 73. Here she is. Put this up here. Ivana Trump's death ruled accidental by medical examiner in report citing blunt impact injuries to torso. A senior New York City official with direct knowledge of the matter said the circumstances of her death were consistent with a fall on the stairs. Okay, Ivana Trump, Donald Trump's first wife, died at the age of 73 after an accident involving blunt impact injuries to her torso. The medical examiner said the manner of death has been determined to be an accident. Okay, so that's what they ruled it as. All right, moving forward. So let's go back here to this article. Let's just finish reading here. So authorities discovered Ivana Trump's body on the spiral staircase of her apartment. Following her death, depositions in a civil tax fraud investigation led by the New York Attorney General's office into the Trump Organization were postponed for Donald Trump and two of the former children, Donald Trump Jr. and Ivanka Trump. So they were scheduled to deposition because he had a civil tax fraud investigation going on into his businesses. Okay. So I Googled, I said, what was Donald Trump's civil litigation in 2022 about? In 2022, Donald Trump was involved in several major civil litigation cases, primarily centered on allegations of business fraud, defamation, and the handling of government records. The most significant action was a lawsuit filed against him by New York Attorney General Letitia James. All right. The lawsuit alleged a decade-long gross fraud, accusing Trump of inflating his net worth by billions of dollars on financial statements to mislead banks and insurers into providing more favorable loan terms and insurance coverage. Assets involved. The suit alleged inflated valuations for assets such as Mar-a-Lago, Trump Tower, and various golf courses. Okay. So I asked, did Ivana Trump manage Mar-a-Lago, Trump Tower, and various golf courses? Yes, Ivana Trump played a major role in managing several key Trump Organization properties, particularly during the 1980s. While married to Donald Trump, she acted as a senior executive for the company. Trump Tower. Ivana was the vice president of interior design for the Trump Organization. Mar-a-Lago, she managed the Mar-a-Lago property and all of that. So I say that to say it's clear that she was quite involved in the Trump business, actually. I think she did write a book that it said something along the lines of making Trump or something like that. Because let's be honest, behind every successful businessman, every successful man in general, you will usually find a very smart, brilliant woman behind them. That's not always the case, but it certainly is helpful. And she was certainly involved, and she certainly was involved with her children, but she wasn't, and she did. She took care of the kids so that he could go on to the success that he has. And she was, very good at it, and she loved it. And there's interviews of her talking about it, and she absolutely loved being a mom, and she loved the business side of things too. She, that was what she said. So, with that being said, with her being involved in that way, and there being scheduled depositions, it makes you wonder, why it's kind of convenient, like I said in my last episode, that it's convenient for Trump that she somehow falls down the stairs accidentally at her apartment right before that trial is to begin. So, I mean, to the point where they had to postpone them because of her death. So they got postponed because they were set to begin, I believe, the following week. Could be wrong on that, but it was certainly that year, and I believe near the time of her untimely accidental death. So let's move forward here. I'm going to play a video for you guys that I think is relevant to why, or actually, I mean, it's relevant, but I'll say that it makes the fact that she fell down the stairs even more suspicious. If I can get it to pull up here, guys, sorry, bear with me. Gosh. Now I know how barren feels. I get it, dude. All right, let's go. It's up here. So, all right, before we get into that video, where is it? Oh, here it is. All right. Michael Wolff says Trump talked to Epstein about murdering his wife Ivana after finding out Marla Maples was pregnant. Trump said, "What if I pushed her down the stairs?" All right. I won't speak for him here. Let's let him speak for himself. Turn up the volume here so you can hear, guys.
This is a grim story, and all trigger warnings ought to apply. CNN has uncovered video of Jeffrey Epstein at Donald Trump's 1993 wedding to Marla Maples. I have a backstory about that because Epstein and Trump at this period, the closest of friends, and when Marla Maples came to Donald Trump and said she was pregnant, he panicked, and he went to his friend Epstein and said, "What am I going to do? She says she's pregnant and she's going to have the baby. I'm going to have to marry her." I mean, I think it's important to note how much these guys lived in another time. I mean, this is a conversation that could have taken place. Such conversations did take place in the 1950s. And Epstein said, continuing this in the 1950s vein, "She's lying to you. She's just trying to get you to marry her." And then they went through a long discussion about how he could figure out if this was a lie. But in fact, he ultimately went to the doctor with Marla Maples, and indeed she was pregnant, putting him into a bigger panic. And he went back to Epstein and says, "Now what do I do?" And Trump said, "What if I pushed her down the stairs?" And Epstein said, "Well, you could murder her, and then you would go to jail, or, or perhaps even worse, nothing would happen." But you would have pushed her down the stairs, and when the divorce happens, that would be something she could testify to in court. As I say, grim. And just let me add that one of Donald Trump's main political tropes is always the American flag, to such an extent that it is as though he owns the American flag. So let's just take it back.
I agree, guys. Let's take back the American flag, right? Let's do it. Starting with, first and foremost, I would like to say, because I didn't do it on my last video, and I feel like I probably should have, if you don't know this already, by watching the content that I've already displayed, clearly this is not necessarily content for children. Not because I personally am doing anything grotesque. Obviously, it's just that the stuff that I'm talking about that needs to be talked about, and it's unfortunate things that need to be talked about, are grotesque. They are vile. They are traumatizing. Okay. So if you do have children watching my show, I just want to say, keep in mind that we're going to be discussing some things that are, at least in this episode, I can't say that it's always going to be the case. I don't know I don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes, guys. I mean, we could be doing this for years. I mean, it is deep. So buckle up and shield your kids. Hide your kids, hide your wife, and maybe hide your husband. Anybody remember that? Okay, so with that being said, guys, get the young ones out of the room, because we're gonna get into some of these files that are not fun to read, but someone's got to do it, because if we don't do it, then we rely on the media to do it, and the media thinks that we're sheep and that we're stupid and they're holding the cards. So we're going to start by taking that flag back by going through these files ourselves, and I am going to start with the file I found. So remember, I played Tim Dillon's podcast last week about him saying, what a victim had said. He had found the file. I actually didn't go up and look up the file because I took Tim Dillon at his word. Seems pretty trustworthy, and I still think he's trustworthy. I just wanted to go and look for myself. And there's some additional information, but it's pretty much exactly how Tim said it. So credit to Tim Dillon. When we're in a world of the media holding the cards, be a Tim Dillon. Okay, he's like I said, he tells you what is going on, but in a funnier way. Whereas I'm just kind of like, look, I would love to be funny, but I don't know how to make this funny. He knows how to make it funny. He knows how to take a dark situation and make it funny, and that's probably because of all the trauma he has. So he doesn't know this, by the way. He's unaware, but him and I have trauma bonded in a way. I have not exactly the same experience with my mom as he does with his mom, but it is similar enough. I'll say that. It is similar enough. We have trauma bonded. And so I get the whole making light of things that are not light. It's just something that happens to you after years of trauma. So, um, if you don't have that issue, be thankful. Otherwise, just sit back and enjoy the trauma-induced laughs, I guess. Okay, so I found the file, and the exact file says, so the person who knew it was the madam and broker for sex parties that included minors, both male and female, was Ghislaine Maxwell. I witnessed and participated in sex orgies at the golf course with clients such as Jeff Epstein, Robin Leach, and Donald Trump. There were talks amongst us victims that some of the girls that went missing were in fact murdered and buried at the facility. I was personally threatened by then Trump's head of security at the course and told that if I ever talked of what went on there or saw or who I saw, that I would end up as fertilizer for the back 9 holes like the other. Right? So that's pretty much exactly what Tim Dillon was talking about. However, I want to emphasize this because this was not said in there. There were talks amongst us victims that some of the girls that went missing were in fact murdered and buried at the facility. All right, so let's recap. We know that it is a fact. It is a fact. This is not alleged. This is not my personal opinion. It is a fact that Donald Trump's ex-wife is buried at one of his golf courses. That is a fact. So we're starting with that already. We are starting there. We are starting at the basic fact that his ex-wife is buried at his golf course. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but if someone in my family died, or even a close friend, a relative, or someone I knew died, my first thought wouldn't be, oh, how can I get a tax break out of this? How can I figure out a way to get something out of this? But I'm also not an evil psychopath. So there's that. However, I just, the thing is that I wonder, you have to wonder, where did he come up with that idea? Like, do you think he just was like, oh, how can I get a tax break? Let's do that. No. Or do you think, and this is me asking a question, I'm speculating this. Now we're diving into allegedly territory. So we started with the fact that she is buried there. Ivana Trump is buried there. But now we're moving into questionable, allegedly, just my opinion territory. I question, where did this idea come from? Was this a random idea? Was this oh, hey, how can I get a tax break? Let me look. Because how many people, raise your hand if you knew that you could get a tax break if you bury somebody on your business property? Raise your hand if you knew that as a business owner or a property owner, like or a golf course. Raise your hand if you knew that you could get a tax break by burying somebody on your golf course. Okay. If you're like me, the answer is probably you didn't know. You didn't know. And I am going to go ahead and speculate that Trump really probably didn't know either. However, he does have a lot of lawyers and he has a lot of powerful friends who have lawyers. And I speculate and I wonder, if in fact the victims who are giving these statements and saying things like, uh, saying things like, uh, that some of the girls that went missing were in fact murdered and buried at the facility, saying things like that, you have to wonder, did somebody at some point say to him, hey, if we could legally bury these people here, you'd be getting a tax break? Like, I almost see them sitting around, having a few drinks or whatever and joking around, palling around, and somebody joking about that. One of the lawyer friends just be like, well, too bad we can't report this because you'd be getting a huge tax break if we could. Now, I can't say I can't verify that that's an actual conversation that happened. I'm just saying, if I were in that circle of people, I could see a conversation like that happening because, like I said, How many people just know that that's a thing? Most people don't. So, just throwing that out there. Okay. Moving on to our next file. Prepare yourself. It's not fun. All right. Called FBI Natural Threat Operations Center to report Donald Trump knew and funded underage sex parties at the Donald Trump golf course. So, that completely throws out the window the whole, well, maybe these things were happening at his golf course, but that doesn't mean that he knew. That doesn't mean that he knew it was happening. Just he invited his friends over and had no idea what his friends were doing. Well, that's not what this report says. So this victim reports that Donald Trump not only knew that it was happening, but he was funding it. He was funding the underage sex parties. He was funding it. He said, "Here you go." All right. So the uh redacted victim said, was recently interviewed by an FBI agent. However, he felt triggered as a victim and did not report all the information. The victim had recordings of Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell discussing marketing strategies for high-profile sex parties at the Donald Trump golf course. However, Redacted mailed the recordings to a lawyer in the Cayman Islands. Redacted was part of the Sinaloa cartel and worked closely with Epstein and Maxwell. However, he was able to walk away from the cartel due to his status with Epstein and Maxwell. All right, let's stop here for a second. So the victim has these recordings of Donald Trump, allegedly. Again, say allegedly, but that's the victim's statement. And they handed them over to somebody who is redacted. Why, I don't know. And apparently this person worked for the Sinaloa cartel, but was able to walk away because of their connections with Maxwell and Epstein. And the record so let's just it's recorded. So they have recordings. They were recording. I don't know if it was secretly or otherwise, but they have them. So this isn't no longer, oh, this is someone's statement. No, this is an actual recording. So that would be moving from allegedly territory to like, no, you actually said this because we have it on recording territory. But not only that, apparently the cartel, the Sinaloa, more specifically, cartel was involved. So I want you to keep that in mind for a future episode that I'm going to do, and I will come back to this because I found some information pertaining to the border and the fact that, we have tons of children who went missing on the border that I found in the Epstein files as well. So, and by the way, as I'm saying this, let me be clear. I am not suicidal. I am not suicidal. My family loves me. My friends love me. They would never hurt me. My husband would never harm me. I am a careful driver. I do not get into accidents. I do not speed. I do not drink and drive. There is literally no reason outside of foul play that I would have an untimely death in my young age. So if that were to happen, you guys, somebody needs to investigate it. And don't be a sheep and don't play into the media's cards. Okay? Just saying. Thank you. If I die, this needs to be sent to Candace Owens. She doesn't know me, but considering how hard she went as soon as she's done investigating Charlie's death, please have her investigate mine. So, just saying. Moving on. So we now know there. So there's recordings, and the Sinaloa cartel was involved. Okay, let's pull this back up. All right, so Redacted was part of the Sinaloa cartel and worked closely with Epstein and Maxwell. However, he was able to walk away from the cartel due to his status with Epstein and Maxwell. In the recordings, Trump stated he was aware. Oh, here we go. In the recordings, so keep in mind, this is a recording. Trump stated he was aware of the underage sex parties and charged the house money of the golf course to fund the sex parties. There you have it, folks. There you have it. And my question is, and this is a statement given. I believe this is in the FBI files. Let me pull this up here. Let's take a look here. Yeah, the Federal Bureau of Investigation intake. And this was June of 21. So June 21. Okay. I'm sorry, but okay, June 21. And this guy is still president. This information is just now coming out. He's still not in handcuffs, by the way. And this is what I'm talking about. And so we're supposed to trust the FBI when they tell us that Tyler Robinson is the one who did it to Charlie. That's what we're gonna believe. That's what we're gonna believe. I'm just throwing that out there. That's a whole nother rabbit hole that we're probably gonna go into at some point. But I'm just saying, like, we gotta stop. We gotta realize who's holding the cards, is what I'm saying. We gotta realize who's holding the cards. It's not us. Okay, remember, we're the sheep. We are the sheep. So, this is the FBI. And they have recordings of Trump. In the recordings, Trump stated he was aware of the underage sex parties and charged the house money of the golf course to fund these sex parties. So, and then you have to ask yourself this: if that's true, and the person is also saying that he witnessed people being buried there and killed. I mean, when you talk about credible witnesses and people being credible, I would say that I mean, I'm no lawyer. I'm no lawyer. And I've never been on a jury, but if I was, my thought would be, yeah, seems pretty credible. So I'll let you guys sit on that information, make your own conclusion. Don't let me tell you what to think. I'm not the media. I'll let you think for yourselves. Because unlike the media, I don't think you're sheep. I think you're much smarter than that. So, especially if you're watching my show, you're definitely smarter than that. You're definitely the sheep. The sheep are not watching. The sheep are not watching my show. Let's just say that. The sheep are watching other shows. You guys are not sheep. All right. So, back to this. So, the victim also witnessed Robin Leach strangle a young girl during a sex party. Oh, where have we seen that name before? Let's go back here to our first. We've now moved back to our first file here where we were looking at this. Where have we seen that name before? Here we go. The person who I knew was a madam broker. I witnessed and participated in sex orgies at the golf course with clients such as Jeff Epstein, Robin Leach, and Donald Trump. Oh, wow, look at that. So it's not just one person. This was reported in 2020. Also, again, from the FBI. Okay. So moving back to our current file that we're on here. So they witnessed Robin Leach again strangle a young girl during a sex party. He claims she is buried behind the 19th hole at the Donald Trump golf course. Wow. Okay. Well, that's specific. That's oddly specific. Oddly specific. Let's pull this up here. Where is this golf course? What golf course is this one? All right, I'm gonna have to look into that. At the Donald Trump golf course. So it doesn't say specifically which one, but I'm sure it won't be hard to find out. I'm sure other people already have. I think I saw somewhere online that they were mentioning that it was like the golf course that he had maybe in California, but I'll have to double check and look into that. Man, I wish, you know what would be nice is if I had somebody who could look that stuff up while I was doing this. Like, hey, oh, it was? Okay, thank you. Like, how cool would that be? Maybe someday. That's wishful thinking. I might have to get my husband to do that or something. I don't know. He's good at that kind of stuff. But anyway, so that's oddly specific, folks. The 19th. So they're saying like they have them on recording, and then the next statement they say is that if there is Robin Leach strangled a young girl and she's buried behind the 19th hole. And so how come that hasn't been dug up or looked into? As a matter of fact, at this point, considering the FBI, I mean, I have so little trust in our government at this point that it would not surprise me if they were given this information and then they went and took care of that information. Because they know people are going to be like, well, you need to go and check. They know that. They know that 1 + 1 = 2. So they know if the sheep see their cards, that they're going to have to come up with a different strategy, right? So they knew they were holding on. You have to think about it this way. They were holding on to these files for so long. They were sitting on these files. This one in particular since 2021. So they knew all this information and they didn't release the files until now. Don't you think that they've been given plenty of time at this point to go and cover up all those tracks? Especially considering let's look at the Charlie Kirk case for a second. I don't want to make this episode about the Charlie Kirk thing because that deserves its own episode by itself, but this is relevant because we know that after he was assassinated, they immediately went and paved over the crime scene. They dug it up and paved over it. We still don't know why. We just know that happened. So, with that being said, you have to wonder, like, people are like, why did it take you so long to put out the files? Well, one theory I have is because they needed time to go and tie up loose ends and go fix all the problems that are in the files so that when people look at the files and start asking questions, they can go and, dig up all the golf courses and find nothing. Say, see, look, it was all a hoax. It was all a hoax, folks. I wouldn't be surprised. Come back to this episode. If that actually happens, I'm just saying, if that happens in the future, if they're like, okay, fine, we're going to go look this up. Because I guarantee you, people are looking into this. They're going to find this and they're going to say, go dig up, go look. And then they're going to go look and there's not going to be anything there. And it's because they've been sitting on these files for years and they knew that years ago. And that's assuming that their bodies haven't like completely decomposed anyway. Because that was back in the 90s when that was happening. Allegedly. Allegedly. Okay. So, let's pull this back up. Okay. So, Blank is aware of these three separate occasions in which girls were murdered and buried there. Blank was told if he spoke about the incident he witnessed, he would end up in the hole as well. Where have we seen that before? Where have we seen that before, guys? There were talks among such victims, the one missing, in fact, murdered and buried at the facility. And I was threatened that if I ever talked of what went on there or who I saw, that I would end up as fertilizer for the back 9 holes like the other. And then you talk about this witness here, and I was told if he spoke about the incident, he was told if he spoke about the incident he witnessed, he would end up in the hole as well. Blank gave Maxwell the idea to put cameras in the golf course to review the cartel members and understand how to market the 12 to 14-year-old victims to the cartel. Again, like I mentioned, I'm going to make another episode about the cartel. Well, I guess it's not necessarily about the cartel. It might be. Still looking into it. That's why it's going to be a different episode. But it's also a different topic, which is why it's going to be a different episode. But there's reason to believe that they were involved, obviously, even just from this file alone, there's reason to believe that. Can't say I'm surprised, but yeah, so we'll be revisiting this file in a later episode in regards to the cartel. But moving forward, let's next file. All right, so this subject, this is from January of 2020, and we don't know who's sending, and here's the other thing too. I'm actually going to be doing another episode of, oh, sorry guys, lost you. I'm actually going to be doing another episode that kind of proves that they are redacting the, actually it doesn't kind of, it does. It actually proves that they are not just redacting the victims, they are protecting the pedophiles. They are protecting people that are involved and not protecting the victims. I firsthand, like I literally found this. Okay, so I will be making an episode dedicated to just that. But let's it's as if it's not already obvious. I mean, some of this stuff is like, okay, obviously that's what they're doing. Because there's emails that literally make no sense. Like I found an email that said something along the lines of like, "Oh, I have the I'm ready to send you the tiny electrician," or something along those lines. Don't quote me. Okay. Don't know what that means. It seems like it's code for something because what's a tiny electrician? But just that simple phrase and that simple email, whoever sent it and whoever received it was redacted. Okay, those are clearly, I mean, that's not victims. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff is just like obvious. But if it's not already obvious, I found like even more proof. So, with that being said, here we have from we don't know to we don't know and CC'd we don't know. Why they're talking about this and who they're sending it to and the importance of it to them, I don't know. But it's the subject is about the Epstein flight records. And it says here, for your situational awareness, wanted to let you know that the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported or that we were aware, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case. It's funny. I love the term or that we were aware. It reminds me of Kash Patel in front of Congress. Who was he? He was being questioned by, was it? Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. I'm blanking on his name. Uh, is it? Graham, Leslie Graham, I can't remember. But he's testifying and he's being asked and he's like, "So do you have like the files or like the client list or whatever?" And he's like, "Yeah, there is no client list." And he's like, "Are you alleging that there's no client list at all in these files?" And he's like, and then Cash Patel's like, "That we have, that we're aware of? No." So I just figured that was funny because I'm like, where have I heard that before? Again, that's the thing. It's like that's the pattern I'm seeing where like my brain remembers stuff like that, random stuff like that. That's why when I was listening to the Tim Dillon podcast, I'm like, yeah, clean my house. And he's like, I'm gonna bury you in the back hole like the nether. And I'm like, wait a minute. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, that's right. Ivana's buried there. Why is she buried there? How did he get that idea? And now here I am. That's how that works. But back to this, we have so, or that we were aware. In particular, he is listed as a passenger on at least 8 flights between 1993 and 1996, including at least 4 flights in which Maxwell was also present. He is listed as having traveled with, among others, in various times, Marla Maples, his daughter Tiffany, and his son Eric. On one flight in 1993, he and Epstein are the only two listed passengers. On another, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and then 20-year-old redacted. On 2 other flights, 2 of the passengers, respectively, were women who would be possible witnesses in a Maxwell case. We've just finished reviewing the full records, more than 100 pages of very small script, and didn't want any of this to be a surprise down the road. Yeah. And, it's interesting because it's like it says Maxwell was also present on these flights and and then you hear about she's getting like this cushy treatment in prison. It's nice to have friends in high places, isn't it? Uh, I read something in the files that said they were talking to each other, by the way, in these files. And someone said something along the lines of the higher they get, the sicker they get. Yeah. So could not be truer words spoken. Um, so yeah, I'm just going to, oh yeah, here's another thing. So with that being said, now that we've gone through these files and we've talked about the possible unmarked graveyard at these golf courses, um, I'm going to move into what. So remember when I started and I said, oh, you go down this rabbit hole and you're looking for things, and then you somehow end up going down another hallway? Well, that's what happened. I was looking into the Ivana thing through the files. I was trying to, um, just see essentially like how likely, what is the probability or likelihood? I mean, she fell down the stairs, right? So she fell down the stairs and she is, she dies. But look at this. So, sorry, I keep going back and forth here on my what we're talking about. And we went from talking about Ivana to now talking about the golf courses. But I want to bring it back to Ivana because I think this is important. So if we go here, she died from blunt force impact injuries to the torso, and that's what the medical examiner said, right? So I was just looking into that, and I'm like, okay, well, how common is that? Like, how common is it that somebody would die like that from blunt impact injuries to the torso? Because it seems really niche, Like when gosh, has it been like this the whole time? Have you guys not been able to see what I've been doing this whole time? I'll be so sad if that's the case. Bring this down. Hopefully you guys could see what I was doing this whole time. Otherwise I might have to redo this whole video and I'm gonna be sad. Um, all right, so Ivana Trump died from accidental blunt. So there we go. So we have that up here, and I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys, because I'm like, what? I wrote that wasn't like that this whole time. Hmm. So back to this here. So I'm looking into it, and I'm thinking, that seems really niche, right? Like that seems like why is that common? Like when you fall down the stairs, like when you think about it, of all the cases where people fell down the stairs and they died, it's usually because they hit their head. If actually not even take the stairs out of the equation. If somebody falls, and they die as a result, it's usually because they hit their head. I actually know somebody personally who fell and hit their head on the curb and then their brain swelled so bad that they actually died later to as the extent of their injuries. So that is far more common, at least just in my personal opinion. So I'm like, okay, sort of looking into it. I'm like, how common is that? And here you have it. I looked, I said, why do people die after falling down the stairs? And Google says people die from falling down the stairs primarily due to traumatic brain injuries, which account for the vast majority of fatalities, often resulting from striking the head on hard surfaces. So key reasons for fatalities, a head injury is 80 to 90% of cases, guys. 80 to 90% of the reason why people would die is, so you mean to tell me, I mean, how, first of all, it's rare in and of itself to fall down the stairs hard enough for it to cause any significant impact to you, but it's not impossible. Obviously it happens, but it's just not something that typically is very common. But then you have to factor in the fact that like it's even more rare for the reason that you died as a result of falling down the stairs was not because of the 80 to 90% of the typical reason, which would be a traumatic brain injury. No, it's because of blunt force trauma to your torso. So I don't know. Again, this is just me questioning. Like, that's weird. I'm just saying that's weird. It's weird to me. It's weird, especially considering the fact that or you have Donald Trump talking to Epstein at his wedding, insinuating that, or joking. He was joking rather that he was, that maybe he could push her down the stairs. And then all these years later, right before a deposition, where she could where we have somebody who knows a lot of information about the Trump business, guys. She knows a lot of information. She was managing, operating. She probably knew more than he did, let's be honest. Okay, she was running the show behind the scenes of those places. So, eh, I don't know. What maybe he didn't want her talking. And then also too, let's keep in mind this obviously now that we know what we know about the golf courses and the people involved at the golf courses and the people the witnesses saying that they've seen people murdered and buried there and whatever, not knowing all of that now, I can't say that I would completely take it off the table that she didn't fall down the stairs but was allegedly pushed down the stairs or something else and then made it look as if she fell down the stairs. No, I'm not saying that Trump did that. It is possible it is also possible that, given all this information, it's questionable and possible that he had someone else do it. So, like, yeah, is it also possible that she, you know, was going down her stairs at her apartment and she fell so hard in her torso area that it killed her? Yeah, that's possible. And that is what the official report is. I mean, that's what the media who holds the cards told the sheep that is what happened. Yes. Right? So that's what we know. But is it also possible that someone had her killed because they didn't want her talking at this deposition because she knew a lot of information? And is it possible that they had a prior jokingly idea about doing exactly what the media said happened to her, which was fall down the stairs? That is also possible. So, again, guys, I will just leave that information with you and leave you to make up your own determination on what you think happened or not happened. But I just, I have a lot of questions. Seems a little weird. Seems a little weird. And then that leads us to, let's see here. Here, I looked up on here because I'm just curious. I'm like, well, just how common is this? And I don't know who this guy is. I don't know how credible he is. I don't know what experience he has or whatever, to whatever. But he reports as follows: how many deaths occur with falls downstairs? In the year 2000, 1,307 people died from falling down the stairs. In the USA, the chance you will die from falling down the stairs is 2.7%. Yeah, that's the thing. So the chance that you will even die falling down the stairs is 2.7%, with 80 to 90% of that 2.7% being a damage to your brain in some way, or your skull or whatever. We are talking about a fraction of a percent, like a very tiny percent of people that actually die as a result of blunt force trauma to the torso from falling down the stairs. Like, we are talking about an extremely, extremely rare death. So just keep that in mind. 1 in every 210,640 people will die from falling down the stairs. And Ivana Trump was one of them. And probably even less because it's usually from a head injury. Worldwide, about 12,000 people die yearly from falling down the stairs. And here's another thing too, guys. Let me pause here and just say this. We just got done talking about how smart Ivana Trump is. I mean, she didn't get to she came from a foreign country. She didn't even speak English. She came here, she didn't even speak English. She came here and bossed her way up to the top. Okay, she was really running things. This woman is very intelligent. We're not talking about, she didn't have dementia when she died. She was sound mind. Okay, the day before she died, I don't even know. Like, let's look it up. Let's look up what was Ivana Trump doing. Let's Google this. What was Ivana Trump doing the day before she died? The day before she died, Ivana Trump was preparing for a trip to St. Tropez, her first major outing after being reclusive during the pandemic due to COVID-19 fears. She was seen in good spirits visiting her favorite Italian restaurant, Alexi's, near the Manhattan home. So she was seen in good spirits. She was preparing to go on a trip. Okay. The restaurant owner said that he described her as looking maybe a little bit tired, but in good spirits. She was scheduled to leave for St. Tropez the following day. So she was becoming increasingly frail and reclusive, according to one of her friends. But she didn't have like dementia or anything like that. She was planning a trip. She was going to go on a trip, despite being frail or whatever. I mean, she's elderly. We know that she's elderly. But just because she's elderly doesn't mean she's dumb. Okay, so she's we're talking about an incredibly intelligent woman here, and we're talking about 12,000 people a year die from falling down the stairs. I would imagine that the majority of those people are elderly or disabled in some way, and they probably have some sort of dementia. Maybe not always, but regardless, this woman was of sound mind, in good spirits, and she's a very intelligent person. And you're expecting me to believe that out of the 12,000 people that year that died from falling down the stairs, with the majority of them dying because they hit their head, and a very fractional margin of people who died from the trauma of their torso, that one of the smartest women in American history died that way after her ex-husband was joking about pushing her down the stairs several years prior, after he was caught having an affair with Marla, who became pregnant with their daughter Tiffany. He began to joke about pushing her down the stairs, and all these years later, right before she's set to deposition in court against Trump and I don't know if it was against him or not, but there was a deposition happening where she, because she's very smart, knows all of the insider information about these businesses. The sheep are supposed to believe that she fell down the stairs and died from blunt impact force trauma to her torso. Yeah, we're supposed to believe that. Okay. All right. There's that. And back to where we were here. So, worldwide, about 12,000 people die yearly from falling down the stairs. In a study of 92 accidental stair-related fatalities, the most common cause of death was head injury, as we're already aware, right? 80.43%, followed by hemorrhagic shock resulting from intra-abdominal and intrathoracic visceral injuries. 9.78% of them an injury to the neck. So the intra-abdominal, intrathoracic, which would have been her because torso, was 9.78% of the 92 that were evaluated. 80.43% were head injuries. 9.78 was abdominal, intrathoracic, visceral injuries, and the injury to the neck was 4.34%. The parietal and temporal bones were those most frequently fractured in head injury cases. Followed by subital. Yeah. So, 2 females were accidentally hanged from descending stairs. And then here's their sources that they have listed there. So, anyway, I'm just saying, if you believe that, I'm not saying you're a sheep, but, I do wonder if you bah from time to time. Just saying. Because at some point, we the people are going to have to start taking our cards back. At what point are we going to start holding the cards? Because I'm, starting to get a little weird. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. As I'm looking into this and I'm trying to figure out, I'm thinking, okay, considering how rare this death is and how untimely it is and how, interesting the fact that, Donald Trump was joking about it years prior, and he was set to be in deposition following. I thought, who is the medical examiner that determined this cause of death? Like, this is a strange way to die. You remember the show 1,000 Ways to Die? That, like, this would be episode number 1 here. This is strange. So let's just circle that real quick. I'm like, who determined this cause of death? How did we get here? So I started looking into that. And let's see here. So, oh yeah, wait, before I get into that, pause. That's important though. That's important. Don't leave this video without finishing this part. You need to stay till the end. I'm telling you, it's very important because it's going to lead us into my next episode, which is probably going to be extreme breaking bombshell news here. Okay? But back into what I was saying here, though. I want to take a pause and I want to show you another thing that I found. So we know that Ivana's smart, right? If she's tired, she's frail or whatever, cool. But let's look into this here. I asked Google because I'm thinking, you know, what did she even need to go down the stairs? Did she even need to go down the stairs? No, she didn't, guys. She didn't need to go down the stairs. Did Ivana Trump have an elevator in her home? Yes, Ivana Trump's Manhattan townhouse featured a gated birdcage style elevator that serviced all 6 floors of the residence. And then there's reports that say that despite having the elevator, she used the staircase. But again, we know who holds the cards and we know who's reporting the reports. So, there's that. But yeah, I mean, she had an elevator. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use the stairs if you have the ability to. It's great exercise. But if you're elderly and you have the chance of falling down them, as we know is common with elderly people, and you know that you could fall and hurt your head, which could kill you, why would you take the stairs? Ivana was a smart lady. She was smart. Maybe that's what got her killed, allegedly. So why wouldn't she take the elevator? Again, another question. Might not ever get the answer to, but it's worth asking. All right, next. So I'm thinking, again, who reported on this? Who's the one who said that she died that way? Well, in April 2022, New York City Mayor Eric Adams appointed Dr. Jason Graham as the chief medical examiner for the NYC office of OCME. Jason Graham. All right. So I'm thinking, let's go down this rabbit hole. Why not? So I'm like, okay, this is the guy that did it. I'm like, I wonder if because here's how my brain is thinking. I'm like, okay, well, Donald Trump and Epstein were friends, right? And they have friend circles and they have friend groups. And I'm thinking, if perhaps, allegedly, perhaps Donald Trump did have something to do with her flying down the stairs, and he had the ability to have a New York medical examiner sign off on a manner in which she died, that would be quite the friendship. That would be quite the, I mean, those aren't just friends that you just have. I mean, do you know the type of strings that I would have to pull to be, like, I wouldn't even be able to do that. I would not be able to do that. Like, if I push someone down the stairs, and I'm not saying you did, I'm just saying, if I push someone down the stairs or I had somebody do that, and I wanted to make it look like that's how they died or whatever, I wouldn't be able to do that. Like, I don't have people I can just call up and be like, hey, so I had to do a thing, like I had to, it was getting problematic and like I had to just take them out, like I had to do like a mob move. And so I'm going to need you to go and fix this. Like, go and put, just say that this happened or whatever. For everyone else, for all the sheep out there, good luck. If you're a criminal and you do something wrong, you're gonna do your time. And for some people, even if you're not a criminal and you didn't do something wrong, if they can make it seem like you did or prove it in court, then guess what? You're gonna do time. But if you are an elite, you're Donald Trump, you're one of those people, you can get away with murder. I mean, he literally said it himself. I could shoot somebody in broad daylight and nothing would happen, right? So, and these people know that. Well, why do they know that? Is it because they know they have medical examiner friends that work for the state and the federal government that'll just sign off on a death certificate and just say that that's how they died, even if that's not how they died? That's my thought. So, with that in mind, if we're going with the theory that that is what happened, I would assume, because these people are not, I mean, how many of those kind of people could you have? Like, you got to have some people in the community that are respectable. You got to have some medical examiners that are unaware of this going on. You can't have everybody be corrupt. So I'm assuming that there's, a select few of these people that they have in their circle. So I would assume if she didn't actually die that way and this doctor reported that she died that way, if there's anything fishy going on, then he would probably be involved with his other friends in their circle. They probably call the same medical examiner every time they off somebody. Like, hey, just call that doctor, call this guy, get him involved. We'll get this cleaned up. We'll get this figured out. Right? It's a network of people. So I figured, hey, let's put his name in the DOJ Epstein file. Let's look him up in the files and see if he's in the files. And sure enough, who do we find in the files? Who do you think we found? Yeah. If you guessed Dr. Graham, congratulations. I knew you were smart. You're right. So, let me show you. And then we'll finish this up here. Because that is going to lead us into our next episode. That is man, it's gonna blow this whole thing wide open. It is crazy. Like, I genuinely believe that, like, man, like, people need to see this. And I know that I just started this channel and I know that I'm new, but I'm telling you, like, this information is very important. So please, I haven't been saying this on my channel because I haven't wanted to, I wanted to give people a chance to get to know me first. And I didn't want to make it all about subscribers and likes and all of that thing, because that's not what I'm doing this for. I'm not doing this for clicks and for, clickbait and whatever. I'm doing this for a real reason. I'm doing this for a real purpose. I'm doing this because the media is holding the cards, guys. I'm doing this because I'm trying to help the sheep. I'm trying to herd the sheep. I'm trying to say, hey, guys, you need to know what is going on, okay? And I know that this is dangerous for me. I know that it could get me hurt in some way. I know that people are going to try to dox me. I know that that's why when I started this channel, I was going to do it anonymously, because I knew that if I investigated this further and certain things that I find, it can get risky. And I don't have a security, a detail at this time. It might get to the point where I actually have to hire a security detail and then start paying to have security to be able to keep reporting. But that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is that I'm not doing this channel for, monetary reasons at all. I am doing this because I look into this stuff for myself because I want to know what's going on. So I'm going to do this research regardless. However, after I do this research, my very first thought is everybody needs to know this. People need to know this. And so that's what I'm doing. But the thing is that if people don't subscribe, if people don't like this channel, if people don't share it, if people don't do those things, then people don't hear it. So we need to get this into the algorithm, guys. People need to see this. So please like, please subscribe, please share, please do what you can. Okay, especially because the next episode that I put out is going to be so important. But with that, with no further ado, let's get into where we found Dr. Graham. All right. So I put it in the Epstein files, and here we go from Michael Miller. And just so we know, Michael Miller is the Director of Defense Security Cooperation Agency. He serves as the Director of the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, responsible for the oversight of blah, 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 blah. Okay, so he works for the government. And he was, I think Donald Trump put him in charge of like the Epstein thing after he was found in his cell. So we know Epstein died on August 10th of 2019. Okay. And in this email from Michael Miller to Dr. Graham, subject is Epstein autopsy. Subject is Epstein autopsy. And the date is Sunday, August 11th, 2019, okay? And Epstein died on August 10th of 2019. All right, here we go. Dr. Graham. You mean the same doctor that was looking at Ivana Trump's death? The same one who ruled it as a New York City official, medical examiner, who reported it as blunt impact injuries to the torso? Yeah, that same Dr. Graham. My name is Mike Miller, and I am part of Jeffrey Epstein's legal team. Just a quick note to confirm that we have lined up Michael Baden to observe the autopsy tomorrow. Keep in mind, he died on the 10th. It is now the 11th. We have lined up Michael Baden to observe the autopsy tomorrow, and barring any traffic delays, he will be there by 9 a.m. tomorrow, which would be the 12th. Please call me if you have any questions tonight or tomorrow morning. Mike, my cell is redacted. And then also, too, let's keep in mind, folks, we have all these people in here redacted. Why? Again, why? Why are they being redacted? What victim are we? He's dead now. And this is between officials trying to do an autopsy on him. So who are we protecting here? Really? Anyway, back to what I was saying. Let's see. 1 second, guys. All right, so just in case people don't know, so here's the email. Then here's another email where they're talking about Michael Baden, right? So we have, again, Sunday on the same day, Sunday the 11th, with Michael Miller in there again. And we have trying to see where it is here. Here we go. So I had these out of order. But so because they said Mike. I just tried calling, but I realized it's very late. Moments ago, I spoke with an individual at the office of the chief medical examiner, Dr. Jason Graham. Again, Dr. Jason Graham. And this is August 10, 2019 at 11:04 p.m., the day that he died. He said his office was in touch with the family today. I believe Mark. I believe that's his brother, Epstein's brother. And he had the understanding a pathologist was lined up for tomorrow. But based in the newer understanding that you conveyed, that more time is needed, they are prepared to delay tomorrow the autopsy, which was otherwise planned for tomorrow morning. He conveyed that permitting a pathologist is a courtesy they extend in this type of situation, and that an additional day or two will not have an effect in their ability to evaluate the cause and manner of death. Accordingly, he asks that you please contact him tonight or tomorrow morning to arrange the logistics of the pathologist who ultimately will join. Okay? Because Mike sent him, the reason why he said that is because he said, thanks for being available today and getting the wheels turning for an investigation into how he died. On a related note, we are hearing that Jeffrey's autopsy may occur tomorrow morning. We would like to have a pathologist present for his autopsy and cannot line up someone on such short notice. Is there a way to push the autopsy off until Tuesday to give us time to do that? All right, so let's pause here for a second. Guys, this is literally the United States government. Why can't they get an autopsy on short notice? You can literally do it. You mean to tell me that our government, who they straight up went into Venezuela in one night, they literally turned off all their internet, turned off all their lights, shut everything down, shut their whole power grid down, came in, swooped in, stole their dictator, brought him here swiftly, just boom. You mean to tell me that the very same government that has the capabilities and technology to go in and literally take a dictator out of their country can't perform an autopsy on short notice like that? Weird. Just saying. It's a little weird, right? So then, of course, then their response, like we saw, was, I talked with Jason Graham, his office, and an individual at the office of Jason Graham. He said his office was in touch with the family today, and they're prepared to delay tomorrow the autopsy, which was otherwise planned for tomorrow morning. Whatever. And then contact him. Well, and then that was the email that we read before, which is why I said it was out of order. So I apologize. So then that's when Miller sent that email and said, Dr. Graham, my name is Mike Miller, and I'm part of, a quick note to confirm that we have lined up Michael Baden to observe the autopsy. So that's the pathologist that they've decided on to observe the autopsy with the medical examiner. Barring any traffic delays, he will be there by 9 a.m. tomorrow, which would be the 12th, August the 12th. Okay, please call me if you have any questions tonight or tomorrow morning. My cell is yada, yada, yada. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it at this because, like I said, I'm going to put this in another episode. But let's just say this. We have the same medical examiner who was involved in reporting Donald Trump's wife's death, ex-wife, sorry, excuse me, his ex-wife's death as blunt force trauma to the torso after falling down the stairs. Then he is now involved in the examination of Jeffrey Epstein's death, which is also suspicious. We have the cameras going out at the time. Apparently, the guards were asleep or not paying attention or falsifying that they were checking on him when they weren't. Very suspicious things, right? And it's just weird. That's what I'm saying. Like, we have the same medical examiner now also involved in the examination of Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. And then two, I just want to show you guys, for anybody that doesn't know, because one of the reasons why they were saying they were delaying it is because they wanted to have a pathologist present for the autopsy. So an autopsy is a surgical procedure of examining a corpse, while forensic pathology is the subsequent subspecialty of medicine focused on determining the cause and manner of death in legal cases. Okay. So keep in mind the dates of these emails are very important because Jeffrey Epstein's death certificate is actually in the files. And the medical examiner on the death certificate is not the same medical examiner that they told you it was. It's a different name. So that's weird. And then the media made it seem like his autopsy was done the day that he was, found. I believe even the official, I have to look into it, and like I said, this is going to be a different episode, but we're going to get into that and we're going to check and see if the dates line up on these uh medical examinations or these findings. So who was the medical examiner involved, and who uh authorized it, and what days and times were they doing these things? Because in the email I just read you, it looks like the autopsy to determine the cause of death for Jeffrey Epstein was delayed for one reason or another. Apparently, our government that can go in and swoop up a dictator with no problems, no ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, come on. Apparently, they do not have the ability to get an autopsy done on such short notice. They need plenty of notice. They need a lot of time to, you know, figure out how he died. So we're going to get into that on our next episode. Make sure you watch, make sure you tune in. It's going to be a doozy. Just like this one was. All right. Well, with that being said, guys, it's an hour and a half. I can only talk so much. Because I mean, really, truthfully, I actually could. I could talk all day. I don't know if you're willing to listen to me all day, but I could go on and on and on and on. I mean, like I said, this rabbit hole, you start somewhere. It started with looking into Ivana Trump and how weird it was that she died, and then ended up with, oh wow, so apparently the same medical examiner that examined her death also was looking into Jeffrey Epstein's death. And they both died under very weird and suspicious circumstances that don't make sense. Okay. Oh, and they're both, also involved in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Take that how you will. I'm just here to present the information. I'm giving you the information. It's verifiable. You can go check in the files yourself. Go to DOJ/Epstein, and you can find these files there yourself. All right. With that, have a good day, guys, and don't be sheep.